everybody, welcome to Emily Kate Made This. I am Emily Kate and I'm coming to you from Berlin in Germany. Welcome to my knitting slash sewing slash general crafty YouTube channel. This episode is probably going to be a little bit different because I have just a whole bunch of stuff to talk about and I'm not sure how long it will be, how much I will put in. So I have added timestamps, or I will. Future Emily will add timestamps so you can skip parts if you're not interested in other things. I will be talking about a little bit of knitting, some sewing, it's actually happened for the first time in ages, and my Sweden trip. I went to Stockholm last week, the week before last, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that and some acquisitions. And yeah, general just crafty stuff. So yeah, let's get to it. So it's been a little while since my last podcast because I haven't really knitted anything, which is very weird. I went hardcore into my forest berry jacket that I talked about in my last episode, and as soon as that was done I just felt this sweet relief that I had done it in time for my trip. And then I didn't really feel like knitting anything specific because I was going to go on holiday and I wanted to find a more holiday appropriate knit. And I did cast on a t-shirt, but that was too much lace and I knew I was not going to be able to concentrate on that much lace on a plane trip or after a busy day of walking around the city. So I left that behind. I also had a shawl, but that involves having a tablet and a phone and again lace, so that was left behind. So I cast on a sock, and not just any sock, no, a scrappy sock based off of a vintage knitting pattern. It's not an actual knitting pattern, I should clarify that. The pattern you will recognize. I made a jumper using this pattern at Christmas. And it's just so fun, and I'm using leftover yarn that I had probably from the very beginnings of my knitting journey. Some scrap self-striping yarn. I cast this sock on the plane from Berlin to Stockholm, then got to Stockholm and realised I completely forgot to do any increases, so this colourwork sock did not fit, so I had to rip it all out and start again. So I haven't finished it, we're not even on a full sock, but these are the beginnings of marvellousness. Isn't that adorable? So it's this self-striping, I can't remember the brand at all. It might be Mayflower because I did buy that at one point. But yeah, I'm sorry, it's just scrap. And the white is my mum's scrap from some socks she made me a few years ago. This is some kind of alpaca blend, but it is a sock yarn. And so I got to about here on the plane and then realised I had cast on 56 stitches because I have quite small ankles. And then I just forgot to increase, and when I knit colourwork it gets tighter. And although I usually knit on my socks on 2.25mm needles, I did 2.5, but often if I'm knitting a stone knits pattern, for example, I'll actually go up to 2.75 because my colourwork gets so tight. But I only bought 2.5 needles with me, so I had to increase my stitches up and make sure that I could get the repeat to get the whole bunny ear in. So I did eventually. I got to the same point on the plane ride there as I did on the plane ride back, and since then I've knitted the rest at home. And I always do a heel flap and gusset for my heels, but I thought I would try out a different one because usually, and again when I do stone knits patterns, she'll have pattern that goes all the way down through the foot, and I always avoid it because I don't like the heel, doing a different heel. But for some reason I was feeling adventurous and I decided to do a short row heel. So that's new to me. I did mess up and I haven't quite figured out where I need to adjust this, because basically on the foot I really needed one extra row of the white because there's some white in between the bunny ears, and on the base of the foot I needed one round of white, and I'm not sure where and how and what I did that wasn't quite right. I mean, it's not the end of the world or anything, it's just for future sock knitting projects I'd like to get that right. Also, I got holes which I don't like. I don't get them in my heel flap and gusset style because of the way that I don't know, the way I knit them or the way I've learnt to not have holes. But the technique that I've done before where you pick up a stitch like right in the middle, it was just not working at all. It just made this huge hole. So I'm going to have to sew these in with leftover thread, but that's just annoying. So I'm not loving the short row heel, but I don't hate it. I've only done one other type of heel, and that was the fish kiss lips or fish lips kiss heel. That one I really did not like at all. But I only did that once, and that was about 2-3 years ago, so maybe I like it now. But for now, just branching out into a different heel. I would like to knit some toe-up socks, and that will involve using a different heel, so I'm trying to prepare myself mentally for this. I'm wondering if there is such a thing as a heel flap and gusset for a toe-up sock, and if so, I would like to try that, because I just like those heels. These ones, they don't have huge holes, but they're just not as strong, I suppose. Also, I would like to do this with the same kind of stitch that I do for my heel flap and gusset. So on the base of the third, which would be that one, I usually do some kind of slip stitch or eye of partridge. And obviously this was the first time I was doing this, so I was concentrating and I just did it in knit stitch. But next time, or in a couple of next time, I'd like to try and do a different base. Just the whole reinforcement fun. So yeah, these are delightful and they're so happy and I love them. And I'm really enjoying using self-striping yarn, but not as a self-striping sock. Blah, blah, blah. I like the fact this pattern, this bunny ears pattern, it's from a 1940s pattern, and I'll try and put a picture. Maybe my jumper. I keep calling it a cardigan, maybe because I subconsciously know I want to make a cardigan. I love this pattern, and it feels like when you knit stripes and you just want to do another one, I get the same with this, so I progress faster. I think I have one more bunny to do, and then I will do toes. And I'm thinking, because apparently I'm feeling very frivolous and I'm feeling adventurous, I would like to do left and right toes and see how they feel. I haven't done it before and I've never worn any socks that was specifically left and right foot, but I'm intrigued, so I'm going to give that a go and see how I like it. And I'll just continue using this and hope that I have enough. I think I should have enough for the next sock. I haven't weighed it or anything, but we'll see. So I'm enjoying those, and I actually would love to make a jumper in exactly that pattern and that yarn, but obviously that's not going to happen because this is scrap. But the idea is still percolating away, that if I have some stripy or hand-dyed yarn or anything that has lots of colours, that I will do that. And my next work in progress is my vintage Bestway Fair Isle flower jumper. That's a mouthful. I have done one sleeve. Looks a bit strange, but I have done one sleeve. And this is Knitter's Cottage yarn. I have mentioned her several times, but Vicky is in England and she has some gorgeously gorgeous cute sheep, and she had their wool spun up into wool and it was a once off, and I believe she will be doing it again but a different weight of yarn, which is incredibly stressful because first of all this is such nice yarn, but I think I might run out. Then that's the stressful part, because I can't ever get any more because it was a once off, and I really don't know anybody that might have any scraps or leftover or even a whole skein of this wool to spare. But I'm really not sure if I'm going to manage the whole jumper, but I really, really hope so. I haven't got a plan B on what to do because I don't know any wool that knits up like this one does. It's such, yeah, it's just so bouncy and so lovely to knit with. And I have made these, they were actually meant to be shorter than this, but I actually did make them shorter than I normally do, but somehow, I don't know, they didn't come out as short as I thought they would, which will be better in terms of its, like, the jumper itself. But I had kind of counted on the fact that if my sleeves are shorter I might get more of the body. No, I'm not sure, but let us all cross our fingers and toes that I will have enough yarn for this project. I held off knitting this video, yes, recording this video, because I only had that much of my sock knitted and nothing else to show you. So now I have a sleeve, almost a whole sock, and I did actually cast on the body. Rewind, my mum casted this body on already, but I hadn't done any more on it. My mum was here in March and she casted on the ribbing, the welt for this vintage jumper, and there it is. And then I couldn't figure out what my gauge was going to be using this yarn, so that is why I have a sleeve, because I needed to knit it and block it and measure it. Then I could calculate how many stitches and everything I would need for the body. I was winging it because my mum obviously cast this on before I knew any of this, but I just went on a wing and a prayer that it would work, and I'm hoping it does. I need to put this on a bigger cable to see how it's fitting, but basically I just used the same numbers as I did on my bow jumper, and then I just started knitting and then realised that I hadn't taken into account I needed to fit in the chart. I was very tired and I just started knitting this chart, and I got to the end and thought, that's weird, why doesn't it, there's not enough stitches, and then realised I'd never even bothered to calculate the stitches. So I had to do a quick increase round and bring up the stitch count. So there are a lot more stitches than usual on my vintage knits, but it is a colourwork body, which will significantly bring in, it will get smaller because I'm quite tight with colourwork. You can't see much, even though I thought when I got this far, oh, that's enough to show on the podcast. You really can't see very much. So I hope you've got a lot of imagination. I know it will look better when it's blocked, because right now it's all kind of doing this ugliness. But that always happens, and then I block it and it's all fine. The yarn weights are different. This one is the Knitter's Cottage yarn, and although the gauge was something like 300 and... I have you written down. It's 310 meters in 100 grams, and the colour way, the ball I'm holding with it, is 400 meters per 100 grams, but this does knit up quite thin. Thin. Oh, English and me. So I think they will work together fine. I might do a little preliminary steam block after I've done one whole whole repeat of the flowers, just to see how it's going, how it's looking. But I'm not exactly going to rip it out, so it's going to be fine no matter what. I think it's going to be really pretty, and I'm hoping that the floats won't poke through too much through the white, because usually I try to have a darker background and a lighter forefront colour, but which does bring me on to my usual vintage knitting pattern. Stresses does seem a bit of an extreme word. I'm not actually stressed by it, but the knitting pattern is apparently, so it's almost a rant here, but not really. Apparently, it's very normal that knitting patterns in the 40s would have a white background and put black crosses for white. So if you have a black and white pattern, which this pattern originally was, a black jumper with white as the flowers, instead of doing black crosses for the black and white squares for the white, they do it the opposite way around. And I had this problem, and I'm still having this problem, on this pattern. I have not started thinking about the second one. It is cast on, but I cast it on and then abandoned it a few months ago, because on the pattern all of the white is in black and all of this orange colour is in white, and my brain struggles immensely with this. But luckily the jumper pattern is written out, so they have the chart and then they also have it as knit 7 white, knit 6 black, knit 8, yeah, you know what I mean. But obviously I can't read the chart because I can't read the instructions because they are the reverse of what I'm doing. So the jumper is black with white flowers and I'm doing a white jumper with coloured flowers. So I'm rewriting out the chart by hand. I keep saying chart. I'm rewriting the sentence out. Let's start that again. So what I'm doing is rewriting the pattern out. So when it says 6 black, I'm then writing 6 white, and when it says 6 white, I'm writing 6 colour. And I also nearly tripped myself up with this because it's a vintage pattern, it's knitted flat, but the chart doesn't have any numbers. There's no row numbers and no stitch numbers and no direction. So when you knit flat, you knit one direction and then knit the other direction, whereas in the round you always start from the bottom right hand corner and go up. And I almost knitted that chart backwards and the wrong way around, but I thought that's weird that it would start there. My flowers will all be off center. Ah yes, so I have to write down everything backwards. So eventually I got my head around it. It didn't take long. I'm making it sound more cumbersome and complicated than it actually was. But I'm on a roll. It's just getting my head around inverting everything, which seems to be a theme. Maybe one. I actually really want to do the second mitten, so I have to get my head to understand black means white and white means black, and left means right and right means left, and then it'll all be fine. I'm certain that knitting is excellent for your brain and your cognitive function, because you really have to do a lot of alterations and changes and reversing, especially with vintage knitting, which I have a soft spot for. I'm a big fan. I do actually, looking at my socks there, and looking at the vintage pattern. I have several knitting patterns for vintage socks. They are knitted flat, and I'm quite tempted to try them, just out of curiosity, but I'm not sure how comfortable a seam running up the side of a sock is going to be. But yeah, I am tempted. I'm a sucker for a challenge and suffering when it comes to knitting, so I might just do that. And sorry, I didn't actually mention the name of this yarn. This is Telling Yarns, and I'm pretty sure it's Night Owl colourway. And my lovely friend Nina gave this to me a couple of years ago, and I wanted the perfect project for it, and I felt so guilty just it sitting around not being used. And yet, knowing I couldn't just use it for anything, it had to be the perfect project. So hopefully this is it, and Nina will be very proud that this lovely yarn that she gave me has been used and created into something marvellous. Just blowing my own trumpet there. It's going to be marvellous, everybody. So that is my work in progress. So I'm basically working on those 2 projects at the moment. I do have, and I can see 3 projects over there. No, 4 projects on the go there, and 1 behind me. So I do have quite a few projects on the go. I'm just only focusing on those 2 at the moment. That brings us into the next section, because I don't have any finished objects. So we have now discussed my whips, but I did want to do an update on my stash busting, because I haven't mentioned it again since January. So I did do a little tally, a little roundup, because I love watching people's stash busting videos. Admittedly, they do usually say, I did this and now I have like 100 grams less or a kilogram less, or I'm down this much. Mine is all over the floor. Mine is never going to be like that, because I knit very tiny projects, like thin wool, small jumpers, small projects, but there has been some change. Won't tell you which direction it went, not yet. So, my January in, I was very good, and I didn't get any new yarn in January. Well done me. January out wasn't hugely significant. It was about 132 grams, or 276 meters. Then February didn't go that well, because February in, I purchased quite a bunch of yarn in order to do, basically I had a few jumpers that were missing things, and I wanted to buy enough of it to make up for postage and to be able to get all those projects finished. So I ended up buying 1,400 grams, or 5,177 meters of yarn in February. I bought the yarn for my Victory jumper, which I really wanted to have done for May, but it looks like I might actually just start knitting it in May, because the original yarn I purchased, I didn't have enough of the blue, and then when I tried to buy the blue, every single company were out of stock, and it said next delivery is not for several weeks and unknown date of when it would be in stock. Then I found one, and the colour was not, like, I saw it in real life and it didn't match the colour of mine. Then I used that yarn for something else and discovered it's not going to work at all for that project. So that was annoying, but it's fine because I can definitely use red, white and blue yarn in other projects. But it did then mean I didn't have any for the jumper that I wanted to make. So I got some of that, and it's 410 meters in 100 grams, so that added up quickly. I also got some Rauma for my mum's slippers and my slippers. Yeah, basically it added up quite quickly, and out was not as significant as in. I I knitted one mitten, which you will know has turned into a cactus and is a decoration. And that was 68 grams or 136 meters. I did fix my chevron jumper, but obviously that then actually increased my yarn because I made that jumper smaller. So I got more yarn into my stash, but I haven't actually added that, I don't think, into my stash. It's just gone into the scraps pile. My Bows Are News jumper, that was 212 grams at 720 meters. So yeah, 212 grams out. Woo! Oh yeah, and also my cactus, of course. My March in was also a bit up because my mum visited and we went to Vol in Berlin, and my nan had given me some birthday money and some Easter money, and so I bought lovely things, which I think it was 2 episodes ago, could be 3, 2 or 3, I showed you those lovely purchases, and the colours are so good. So you can see all of them there, but that was 525 grams in, or 2,175 meters in. March out was a whopping 118 grams. But it was a whole t-shirt, and that's what I mean. I could knit a whole jumper or a whole t-shirt, but I knit it on 3mm needles, and it's fingering or light fingering weight yarn, and it takes 4, 6, 8 weeks, and it's like 100 grams. But I did it. April, I was doing really well, and then my lovely friend Miranda sent me 2 75-gram balls of miscellaneous wool. I'm not sure what it is, so I know how many grams, I just don't know how many meters. And then I went to Sweden and I purchased some things. So I got in April 624 grams or 2,100 meters. But I did knit out my forest berry jacket, which was 240 grams or 720 meters. So if you didn't keep up with every number and what havoc I said, quarterly update, January to April in 2,699 grams or 9,452 meters. January to April out, 834 grams or 2,617 meters. So I am up 1,865 grams on my stash busting. Oopsie. And you know, the funny thing is, I'm knitting away on these socks, and I never counted any of this into my stash because it's scrap. It's in these little, where are they? These jars, just random scraps. I didn't bother to count them in because they were such small amounts. So I'm going to make socks and all kinds of stuff with these scraps, and they're not even going to reduce my stash. Oops. Also, my shelf here has loads of cotton, and I have a few cotton projects planned. Didn't count any of the cotton into my stash. So when I finish those cotton jumpers or cotton t-shirts, that won't make a dent in my stash either. I mean, of course, it will make a dent in my genuine stash. Oh, my washing machine is done. It'll make a dent in my genuine stash. I'm not like crying over it. It's just kind of funny that I am bothering to make an account and record it and tell everyone about the ins and outs of everything, but then a bunch of the stuff that I will actually be knitting out won't make a difference at all. Ho-hum, so is life. The main thing is it's fun, and it's getting knitted, and it's getting worn, and pleasure is being made. Being made, being had. Okay, so before I round up the whole knitting section, I'll just quickly mention what I'm wearing before I take it off. This is my Valkyria cardigan by Sjösvärd. Anna designed this in some Gotland yarn, and if you've been here a while, you'll know I love Sweden and I love Gotland yarn. And this yarn is my favourite, and I really, really wish I had more of this yarn. It's, can't pronounce it, Swak yarn from Gotland Spinnery, and it's glorious and fluffy and lovely, and I would love all the colours and all the things. And you can't buy it online unless you live in Sweden, so enjoy, Swedes, enjoy your lovely access to this lovely yarn. I knitted this a couple of months ago. I'll put it here. But I'm going to take it off now because I'm really warm and I need to show you my sewing that is underneath. But I love it. Let's take it off. Okay, so I'm really hoping I have added some footage, otherwise it's going to be really weird that you're going to hear all about this dress and then not see it. But I have made a dress and I am currently in the process of trying to like it. I had this mission. I'll show you the inspiration. Last year I went to England and I picked up this dress pattern in a charity shop. And this is what it looks like in a drawing. This looks significantly smaller on the body than this drawing, but it's a 1980s pattern. And everything about it ticks all the boxes that I want. I want to have a dress for the summer that covers my shoulders so I don't have to smother sun cream on and get it all over my strappy dresses, because I get sun cream all over the fabric and I can't quite get to all the parts of my back. So practicality, I want it to cover my shoulders. I want it in a light neutral colour so I don't absorb the sun, but also I'm a sweaty person, so if you're going to put me in something and I sweat, there's going to be sweat patch galore happening. So light colours. I don't really like black. My exception to that is the charcoal grey of Gotland yarn, because it's not black. It's like a charcoal but has a shine to it. I'm not a huge fan of black. So this one is adorable because it's covered in teapots. So I want something that is loose fitting, covers the shoulders, is light in colour, has some sleeves, has a pleated skirt that's long, and can be like lots of space at the waist, because I also expand in size throughout the day, throughout the month, and I like the idea of having something that's not super tight on me during the summer, because I love my 1950s style clothes with the nipped in waist and the big poofy skirts, but in the summer it can get a little bit too much if it's 37 degrees and I've got a skirt, a petticoat, an underskirt, like all the clothes and all the layers. So theoretically this was absolutely perfect, but I don't suit oversized clothes, and that's the problem. I want the oversized clothing that covers everything and is loose so that all the sweats don't just cling to my clothes. And the reality though is it doesn't suit me at all, and I just look like I'm wearing like a potato sack, like a shapeless bag. But it is what I actually want. So I am fighting this. This is actually the style that is practical and I need, but it's not the one that looks nice or that I want. And I made this the smallest pattern to the smallest size of the pattern. And it just looks like a hospital gown. It could be the fact that it's white and has small ditzy print. So it does have this hospital gown-esque vibe. It's also quite large. And it just did not work at all. So I pinched in some of the excess fabric like this, and it brought in the fabric. And that is why there is this big band that goes down the middle. And in the mirror, it looks a lot better than in a camera or a photo. But I pinched it in and thought I could put buttons down it and it might look like a fake button band. But then I kind of like the fact that it also just looks like a pleat, or I like, when I look at it, I like how it looks. But when I look at it in this camera, I'm like, ooh, I don't know. That's bad ironing. But also I did it so that at the waist, I decided I would add ties. And then it wasn't until later on I realised the waist is elasticated, so I didn't really need the ties, but hey ho. But because it's elasticated, I couldn't add darts or shaping to the bodice because I don't think it would work. I also wouldn't know where to put the darts because the elastic pulls everything in significantly. So that's why I didn't do this all the way to the bottom, and it kind of gives it this, I don't know the name, like, that is on purpose. There we go. This is what it does in the pattern, but I did think about like adding a button or something, but this is all sewn in a certain way. I can't just cut it because I would have the raw edges to deal with, and yeah, I don't know. Then I thought I could just tuck it in, but then it just falls out during the day. But it's just this shape. It's just not a good shape. I was hoping with washing over time, this hasn't been washed since I sewed it. Over time the fabric might soften and relax and then just kind of drape better. So there is hope there. So although theoretically the waist does pull in, because there's just so much on the top, it just still looks unflattering. But I don't want it to be tighter because then it would just be a tight fitted top, which is what I didn't want, which is why I made this. Are you following? I don't know. I don't know if I'm just making absolutely no sense. But I also made the skirt, which is enormous, and I'm not 100% sure if I made the right decision or not, but the pattern has pleats, but when I made them on this, the pleats were massive, and I thought it just made me look even wider because the pleats were like box pleats almost in size. So I had 5 massive squares around my waist, and I just looked like I was just a huge, humongous square with a square on top. And I didn't like how it looked, so I went back to my original, I don't know how much they are, like 1-inch pleats. And the skirt looked so nice, and I was really happy with that. But then I obviously added the elastic, so it smooshed it all in. So now I'm thinking maybe it would have been fine with the bigger pleats. I don't know. But I do like the skirt part to this. But I can't take off the top part because the reason it looks like it does is because the bodice has the elastic casing which pulls it all together and does all the things. So theoretically I could rip the whole thing out and use some fabric and make a waistband and make the skirt. But the point was to make a dress that had these properties. So I will try it for the summer, see how it goes, see if I bond with it, see how it washes. If I really don't like it, I will probably dismantle the bodice from the skirt and just turn the skirt part into an actual skirt. But I want to give it a go, because when I put cardigan on, I really like where the elastic waistband cinches in and the cardigan sits in the right space and the skirt looks nice. And I like that. I know this is a very sweaty themed topic, but I like the fact that if I wear a cardigan, I can just sweat into the dress and not into all my knitwear, because that is typically what ends up happening with vintage knitting. It's tight fitting, so you can't fit a whole bunch of t-shirts, layers under there. A whole bunch of t-shirts sounds extreme. I don't need a whole bunch of t-shirts under my knitwear. A singular t-shirt, it can get a bit much, because it's a form-fitting jumper that you're shoving a t-shirt underneath. So yeah, everything just gets sweated on. And the point of this is that this gets the sweats and not the jumpers. So it's a work in progress of loving this. And hopefully I will add some footage and you can see what I mean. But I don't think that I will be making another one of these. I need to find a different style that works. Yeah, I'm trying to tuck it in. I don't really know how to alter this pattern either to make it sit how I want. That's the thing, if I look on Instagram or look on Pinterest and I see somebody wearing a dress like this, I like it. And when I put this on a hanger and hang it up, I love it. I think it looks in such a nice shape. And then I put it on and I'm not happy with it. I've tried to put a belt around it, but I need to add an extra notch into the belt hole so that it would actually sit around my waist, because at the moment it's sitting in a weird place. But I'm hoping with like maybe a bright red necklace and a bright red belt, it will become more of a background for more fun things. Like I found a cool cardigan or a scarf or something that doesn't have this white right up against my face. Maybe it would take away the hospital vibes. I have in my memory a necklace, a wooden beaded necklace, and it's red, and I feel like that would go with this more like costume jewellery style dress rather than a dainty dress. So that, yeah, lots of playing around and seeing how I feel about it. Wondering how many people I've lost during this rant. So I actually made this dress so that I could wear it in Sweden and then discovered I wasn't that happy with it, so I didn't actually end up wearing it there. And it ended up being so cold in Sweden that I would never have worn. Just a lightweight cotton dress. It was technically about -1, but the real feel, or I suppose wind chill is also known as, was more like -6. and we had been having 24 degrees here. So although -6 doesn't sound that cold, when you've gone from 24, and we had 27, and then it went to 24, it was hovering around 16 by the day we left. Yeah, -6 was a huge change, and it was really windy and really cold and snowing, and yeah, that was a shock. So this did definitely not come with me to Sweden. I took the dress that I wore last year in Sweden at the same time of the year, and it was a linen dress, and last year we had 13 degrees in Stockholm and it felt like 25. It was so hot. We were walking in t-shirts and my husband bought shorts because it was just so hot at 13 degrees. And this year was significantly different. I will continue on the theme of sewing, but I'm going to now intertwine it with Sweden because I bought it in Sweden. So I had a dream just before we went to Sweden, maybe 2 nights before, that, like, this is how thrilling my dreams are, everybody. I had a dream that I had purchased some linen, blue and white, checkered fabric, and made napkins and a tablecloth. And I felt kind of sad that I hadn't actually got these, because then I could have taken them with me to Sweden. Because I am that kind of person, yes. I am like an adult baby. I have to have, it's not actually a bib, but I do put a tea towel or something here when I'm eating, and I always eat like the food right up here on my chest when I'm eating, and food inevitably finds its way down my knitwear or my clothes, and that is why I have my adult bib, aka a tea towel. And I thought a napkin would be more suitable. And then we went to the thrift stores when we were in Sweden, and what did I find? I found a little bag that was just someone's compilation of miscellaneous sewing stuff. And I could see in the bag, if I can put a picture on the video, I could see that there was some fabric in it. I couldn't see how much, and I couldn't open it, but I purchased it. And then when I got home, I realized it was perfect. Don't think it's linen, but I think it's cotton. Blue and white, checkered. And there was this, and probably the one that just fell on the floor. This was one piece of fabric in length. But it was so perfect to just fold in half and make the perfect size napkins. So now I can have a self-made napkin, aka adult bib. And my husband can have one if he so desires. I have made bowl cozies, and we do use those. So if the bowl is really hot or really cold with ice cream, you can put it in a little cozy and still hold it and not burn your hand. And in the same little baggie, there was just enough for a small table, which is perfect for my small table that we have on the balcony. And also if we have a picnic, when it's going to happen, when we have a picnic. So all I had to do was fold in the sides, and some of them were already folded. So whoever made this had already done half the work. And I know this sounds kind of weird, but one of the best things is that it came and it's stained with tea or something, and there's a little almost hole. I have to do a little fix job there. But my problem is when I go to thrift stores, I think, oh, it's going to be cheap and I won't care that I'll ruin it because it didn't cost that much, which is a complete lie, because for me, it's not always about money, it's about the uniqueness of the thing. And I'll buy something from the 1970s or 1950s and it might be €2, but I think, oh, I can't use that, I'm going to get tea on it and I'll ruin it and I'll stain it and I can't ever buy a new one. So the fact that this has already got a stain means I can now just throw this on the ground at a picnic or put it on the table and not be like a helicopter. Don't eat beetroot over that. No, you can't put chocolate cake on there. And yeah. I can now use it and be relaxed because it's already stained. So, little insight into my craziness and controllingness. So now I'm happy I've got my matching napkins to go with my tablecloth that I found in the thrift store. And in the same bag, it came with some of these little scraps of wool and some thread and some lace trimmings and tape measure, some very, very fun Swedish, what do you even call it, band thing, some buttons, some needles, some safety pins, a little fun loot, which is very exciting. And that is all my sewing, I would say. I also did do some mending, which I was going to talk about, but that doesn't, this episode will be way too long if I start talking about that. Because before I was doing my knitting and this dress, I suddenly decided I should start mending things that I haven't even looked at for the last 2-3 years. So that was great. Bit random and odd, but great. So they're all fixed now. So now I will talk about some acquisitions that I got in Sweden. They are all vintage except one. No, the yarn is not. The yarn is not vintage. Some vintage, some modern. I will have some tea first. Okay, I will start with yarn, then I will talk about some vintage, because that's what I'm going to do. I knew that when I went to Sweden, I wanted to wear my forest berry jacket, and I wanted to wear it to, what is it called? Linnet or litet nistan. It's basically called little skein in Swedish, but I can't remember the pronunciation or the name. But it's a yarn store, and I purchased some campus wool there last year in April to make the forest berry jacket. And my mission this year was to wear the completed forest berry jacket back to the store, which I did. And I took a picture because I felt cool. I felt like I did it. I actually did it. My original plan was to purchase some more campus yarn, and I wanted to buy like a cream or a pale colour because, are you prepared for a shock? For a mad woman's declaration. I want to make a forest berry skirt. To be honest, I'd love to make a forest berry dress, but I'm not quite there yet, not quite mentally there. So I will make the skirt first. But when I got there, I saw all the colours and thought, you know, I really don't want to buy just white. I love buying white. Like, I love seeing cream natural yarn. But when it's sitting next to a whole bunch of colours, it's very hard to buy. And I showed my husband and said, what do you think if I bought this and made a skirt? And he was like, in that colour? Really? Which I was already like, I don't really want to buy a cream one. And then having him go, really? I'm like, yeah, exactly, I should buy colour. Yeah, you're right. I almost purchased the same colour as my cardigan so that I could make it look like a dress, like a suit almost. But the colour dye lot was so different that they wouldn't work together. And so I purchased this stunning colour. Isn't this so good? I love green, you may have noticed. Green and blue and cream together seem to be my current new obsession. I love those colours, and a dusty pink. Don't know why this colour combination's happening, but I'm enjoying it. Like, this combination, I'm loving this. So this is a campus yarn, and it doesn't have a colour name, but it's 256 And I bought 3 of these so that I could make the skirt. Obviously the skirt will not match the cardigan. I'll wear them at separate times. But maybe one day I will make the dress. Because now I'm mentally prepared for the bobbles. I kind of want to start it now because I've recently finished the pattern and it's relatively fresh in my memory. But I want to knit it in the round and I haven't figured out, am I overthinking this? Is it less complicated than I'm thinking it is? Because the cardigan is knitted flat, so the chart is flat. So it's not just knit 1 row, purl 1 row, you have to knit the cables and the bobbles and purl with the cables and the bobbles. And well, you don't purl the bubbles, but I'm wondering, am I overthinking it? Is the chart actually that complicated, or do I just have to switch the cables to be like the knit row on the purl row? Don't think I'm making sense, but I'm going to do a small little swatchette, I was thinking I might try a sock so I could practice the pattern just on the top of the sock and see if that is if what I'm thinking is correct, to convert it from being flat in the round. And then I will knit this skirt and I'm excited. So after that, I stumbled upon a different yarn store that isn't a yarn store. It's a Swedish heritage? I'll put the name here or down below. Oh, my battery is dropping like crazy. Okay. I was on a mission to go to a fancy tea shop to try and find some tea, and also to find a book, which I will talk about in a minute. And I stumbled upon this shop and saw yarn in baskets in the window, so I had to go in. And I was so overwhelmed by the yarn and its colours and the beauty and all the things. I stood there and it was kind of the opposite of what you would expect when you come across a yarn store full of lovely things and you're like, oh, isn't it wonderful? I stood there just completely paralysed with absolute indecision. I couldn't make up my mind at all. I'd actually gone to Sweden thinking I would go to Makerai 19. There was some Gotland wool and it was really beautiful, and I hadn't bought it last time, and I went to buy it and the shop was closed. So this year I was like, I'm absolutely going to buy yarn there, Gotland yarn there. And I went there and it was €30 a skein, and I would need at least 3 skeins. And I just stood there thinking, I cannot pay €90 for 3 skeins of yarn. I went there with €100 to spend because my mother-in-law gave me €100 for my birthday, and that was the money I had to spend. And I just couldn't, and I left. And then I came across this other store and they had Gotland yarn there, and I knew I wanted more of this charcoal Gotland yarn, but there were so many colours and I stood there for so long and I felt so stressed because I felt like greedy, like you don't need this, you don't have a specific purpose, you don't need to be here and you're wasting your time. So we left, and 2 days later on my husband's birthday I was laying down, I thought, I know, it's that colour I want that one, and that's definitely it. And because we didn't have any plans at that moment, it was only a half-an-hour walk, so we went back and I bought it. It was the charcoal grey that I wanted the whole time. It just took me 2.5 days to realise this. And this is the, how do you even pronounce that? Heldholz Danks Pelsuld. It's Danish, but Gotland sheep, and it's a mixture of Gotland and something else. which I can't remember. Gotland and Falkland Merino. But in this beautiful Gotlandy, lovely, charcoaly loveliness. And it was cheaper than the other shop, which had the same combination. And I wanted to buy this colour there anyway. So I'm delighted because now I have this yarn. And I'm going to make, I think, a cardigan, but that could just be because my other cardigan that I was just wearing is made in this, and I just look at this and think cardigan. But I might use it for a vintage knitting project. There are lots of potentials. But I knew I wanted to go to Sweden and get Gotland wool in Gotland coloured wool, but I got so distracted by all the colours. But once I had purchased this one, I didn't feel like I had to buy green because I already had, so yeah. Western problems, hey? I am very grateful that these are the problems in my life. Decisions on which colour to buy. So, I found this yarn store en route to buying my first Swedish book. I saw this, I think on Instagram, but I'm not 100% sure. But I follow so many Swedish Instagram accounts because I'm obsessed. And I came across this book, and I'm not sure if it's in English or if it will ever be in English, but it doesn't actually matter because it's an entire book filled with charts. And I thought that sounded super fun. And one of the ones that I love a lot, which I just so happened to open as I said that, is one with little people like holding hands in traditional dress, and I just love them. I love, what would you call them? I love pictures or basically anything. If there are people or houses or trees, they're like my favourite. And of course animals. I have jumpers with animals, and yes, this has cats and squirrels and people and flowers and all the things. So this was the mission. I went to Sweden hoping to find this book, and I did. And yarn. And something very exciting to me. I really wanted to find vintage knitting patterns in Swedish. And no, I don't speak Swedish, but I do want to learn. That is on my life bucket list. I'd like to learn. And I last year went to a really, really cool shop that I actually bought most of this stuff in. And it had some vintage sewing patterns last year. So I've still got those in my to make list. They're on my mind all the time. And this is the year I really, really hope that I get my Sojo back after this experience and I can make them. But I came across some vintage knitting patterns and I'm so excited. The first one I just picked up and then only later realised that it's actually for a knitting machine. But I'm hoping that doesn't make much of a difference. Surely a knitting pattern is a knitting pattern, right? I don't know. We'll find out. But I found this, which is kind of funny because my German like 1950s, 1940s knitting books advertise this knitting machine. And now I've got a magazine. So it is quite cool because it does show you how to set up and how to use a knitting machine, obviously in Swedish, but there are pictures, and I really hope one day I could get a knitting machine because I have so many things I want to make, and especially now, but I don't even know where I would find one. I've looked online, but it's really difficult to look for a machine you don't know anything about in a language, German, that you're not 100% like understanding, and everything done online on eBay where people do tend to say it's functioning, it's great, but then you receive the thing and it's missing really vital things. So I don't know when, but one day I would like to get a knitting machine. But it's got some really cool like patterns and descriptions on how to make them, and some yeah, just fun jumpers and all the things, and it has the charts, and I have high hopes that I can use this. I was trying to find another pattern to show you, but I'm failing. But like, they have skirts. How cool would it be to make a knitted pleated skirt? I really want to. Can you tell I'm overexcited? I should have some tea and calm down. On our final day there, the day before or 2 days before, we had gone to the same vintage store and I'd seen these magazines, but my husband is not a fan of shopping, not a fan of thrifting at all, and obviously it's not very nice if we go there and I spend an hour looking at some magazines and then leave and not buy any. And so I just quickly flicked through some pages of these magazines looking for knitting patterns. And I saw a couple, but I'd already been there a while and we had other plans, and I knew we should just go and do other things. But on the last day, we discovered that our flight was at a bit of an awkward time and we had done everything we wanted to do and we had time to kill. And so he said, we need to spend like an hour somewhere before we go to the airport. But it was snowing and really cold, so it should be inside. And I thought, maybe we could just pop back into that thrift store that we went to. And he was like, yes, that'd be great, because you could spend like an hour there and I can just sit and read something on my phone. I'm like, yes. So we did. And that meant I had time to go through some of the magazines. I would have gladly purchased some more, but you know, money. They weren't expensive, but obviously things add up over time. So I got a few. This one is from 1938 and the rest are from 1944. And they're a mixture of, I suppose they're a bit like Woman's Weekly in England. They'll tell you like the fashions of the Hollywood stars. They talk about the clothes that are in, like, I'm balancing everything on my knees. Ugh. Maybe I should do more of an overhead and add some pictures. But yeah, there's obviously advertisements, there's some recipes, which I'm really excited to try. There's some apple cakes and stuff. Yeah, they talk about some really deep topics. I won't even mention the topic theme because I don't even think we're allowed to talk about that nowadays, just openly without being censored. But that was interesting. Obviously I use Google Translate to put it over the articles to read them. But there's some knitting patterns, obviously, and some like home things that you can do, how to decorate your curtains and use embroidery to do your curtains, or gift ideas, how to wash your hands and wear gloves for silky smooth skin. Just fun things. And I thoroughly enjoyed going through these and I will go through them multiple times. Yet there's also stuff on gardening and when to plant, and it's even more fun because it's in another country that has different temperate zones. I'm saying that with confidence, like I understand what I'm saying. Obviously Sweden and northern Sweden and Sweden in general is very different to England in terms of vegetables and growing seasons, so it's just interesting. Did I mention it's interesting? There is a really fun knitting pattern in one of these. yeah, there's only one knitting pattern per magazine, but maybe two if I'm lucky. But looking at everything else, it's just really interesting. There's just tips and tricks for various things, and that's not the magazine I was looking for. But I just love seeing all the clothes. This one I would love to make. And I just love the pictures. Yeah, I would, ooh, I've got 7% battery. I will have to charge this and come back to you. One moment, please. Hi. So, it's been about an hour. I have changed, and the sun has come out, so that would have been nicer at the beginning when I was recording. But hey ho. I just wanted to finish up talking about my purchases in Sweden. So I have taken some footage on my camera. Hopefully the front-facing camera did a good enough job to show you the purchases. I purchased this vintage blouse and also a vintage skirt. Admittedly, they do not go together at all, but it was easier to show you them in the same video. I thrifted this one in, it's an antique thrift store in Gamla Stan in Stockholm. Admittedly, last year everything was a lot cheaper in Stockholm than it was this year, so this wasn't that cheap, but it was about 15 euro-ish. But I loved this when I saw it. I don't love the colour. I don't know if the colour is even my colour, but it's got embroidery all over it. I hope the lighting hasn't altered too much, but it's all embroidered, even the collar and the cuffs. And it was just so pretty. And obviously everything is handmade by somebody, but you can see this is handmade, as in there's no overlocking, and I was going to pull it out, but I think I've taken a video of some of the seams. That it's all just done by hand, and that totally sold it to me. So I have to learn how to style it, and I'm thinking I need big bold jewellery to distract the colour. I'm not sure what to do yet, but it had to come home with me, and it fulfills the purpose of covering my shoulders in the summer from the sun and being lightweight and easy to throw on over a dress to stop myself getting sunburned. I did actually purchase the belt as well in the same store, but this one I don't know how old this is, and I definitely don't know how old this is. I'm also not sure. It does have a label, but without trying to sound rude, I'm not sure if it's up to shop standard. Does that make sense? It looks handmade. You can see lots of mistakes, and I'm not sure if somebody made this and then just added a label from the store. That, where is it? From David McG Paris. But it's really obviously not neat. Whoops. And maybe somebody altered it, I don't know. They definitely did some mayhem on the inside with all this craziness, but the outside of the skirt is beautiful. It's got these amazing pleats. I love this. I saw this and immediately fell head over heels in love, and then when I noticed that it looked so imperfect on the inside, I just love things that look handmade. And admittedly, if it looked as like this on the outside, I probably wouldn't have fallen as much in love, because it is quite a mess on the inside, but nobody's going to look there. I barely look there, so I don't care. It is actually bigger, if this label is actually relevant to the garment. It's size 42, and I'm not sure what era this is. I went on eBay and a bunch of people were selling David McGee clothes from the 70s, so maybe it's the 70s, I don't know. But I'm not a 42, and it is big, but it's not massive, and with a belt it fits perfectly. And it's so good because I'm so used to having clothes that are tight that as soon as I eat, I can feel my skirt and I have to undo the zip at the back of my dresses or skirts. And this one, because it's big and it's not elasticated, it's just a bigger skirt. It feels so much more comfortable. If I took the belt off, it would fall. Not to the ground, I do have some hips, but it is too big. But I'm beginning to think I need to make everything too big so that it fits when I expand in size. I am so in love with these two purchases. I just danced around our Airbnb when I got them. I bought some shoes that were reduced, and I bought some clogs that aren't clogs. They're wooden shoes. I will put a photo or something here. And I just saw that they were on sale, and I wanted wooden shoes before we went there, and then that they were on sale, I got them. I don't know if they're like a knockoff brand, but they're lovely, and they looked so cool with this because they're blue, and as I said, I'm really into blue, green and cream. So yeah, I was frolicking around the Airbnb in this outfit. And yeah, I got this belt, which is a leather belt, and I also got a red leather belt that said made in Sweden, and so naturally I was like, oh, it's made in Sweden, I need it. I do make it sound like I just went crazy shopaholic, spent thousands, but I did not spend thousands. It was like €3 or €4. It's just, I can't find any thrift stores or like charity shops we would have in England. In Germany, I have seen a couple, like Humana is around, but they're really expensive and the quality of the clothing really isn't that great in Germany. Well, in Berlin. I don't know about Germany. In Berlin, I have been to them and I just thought, I don't get it. Why are people buying things for 30, 40 euro when they're covered in stains and have holes? But oh well, that's just me. And so I love going to Sweden because they have thrift stores with these really cool vintage things. And I also picked up this adorable linen pinny. I don't know, as I said to you earlier, because it's so beautiful and it's a one of a kind and I can't just go and buy a new one. Don't know if I'm going to actually wear this when cooking because I don't want to get stains on it. but I do like the idea of just wearing it as part of an outfit. It's so cute and I'm really happy with it. And it goes nicely with the skirt that I just showed you. Oh, where I was going with that was that I don't know how to get genuine leather belts, like good quality vintage clothing or accessories, because nowadays the quality is just not great. And I noticed that when I buy clothing that is older, like 70s, 60s even, it fits so much better. And even though you can see it's hand sewn, all the seams are hand sewn and the finishings are done by hand, they just last longer than the things I buy in a store that just at some point just start to somehow disintegrate. Which is why I make my own clothes and buy thrifted and vintage. But it's not actually easy to do that in Berlin because I can't find thrift stores. So I found these belts and I'm so happy because I've spent years looking for a belt that actually will last and not just be made of plastic, vegan, fake leather that just goes all gross and ugh. I am very curious how long this episode is going to be. I have been talking for so long and I'm not even done. I wanted just to talk about my holiday a little bit, but I kind of feel like I've already spoken a lot. Don't know if anyone is going to be interested, but I'll try and be brief. Yeah, we arrived on a Wednesday, we went straight to eat, then we went to some thrift stores, of course. Then that was basically the evening time, so the next day we went to a place that I will name here, and we walked a lot. We walked about 15 kilometers every day. I know that they have public transport, but we like walking and you get to see more of the city, so we did. And we went to this really beautiful place that we went to on the last day last year, and we got there early and we were not hungry, and we bought all this beautiful, gorgeous, delicious food and we weren't hungry to eat it, and it was really depressing. So this year we went there hungry and we got lovely food, and the weather was toasty because, well, the weather wasn't toasty, the weather was cold, but the inside of this place was toasty, and it's like a huge greenhouse and all the food is lovely. And we wandered around, we went to some thrift stores, and what else did we do that day? Pretty sure we went to Gamla Stan, the old town, that day, wandered around, had some fika. I love my cinnamon buns. I can't handle that much sugar, to be honest, but I did either share them with my husband or cut them in half and put them in a lunchbox and bring them home and have them later. I love the idea of coffee and sugary sweet buns, but I don't really eat sugar, and I don't drink coffee that much. So when I go out and have these things, it's like an overload of stimulatory sugar, caffeine meltdown. So I have to cut it out and have it in small bits throughout the day. And of course we went food shopping. We stayed in an Airbnb so that we could have a kitchen or kitchenette, so that we could buy food and make our own. So we love going to food shops and supermarkets and independent stores and buying food and then making it. So I got my cloudberries, which it's so exciting. I love cloudberries. I love the name of them. I love the fact that they grow up north in mystical lands. One day I will go up north, maybe even to pick cloudberries, but they are quite hard to find, I have been told, so maybe, maybe not. And what else? We bought some lovely honey and cheese, of course. The awesome cheese knife thing that has a very specific name that I can't pronounce. I purchased one in Ica, like a supermarket, but kind of regret not buying a nice fancy one. But they were really expensive, but they had a wooden handle, and I think they probably cut the cheese a lot better than my cheap €4 Ica one. But it was fun, and I got some, what is it, tunbrod? I don't know. Some bread that someone recommended to me last time and I didn't get it. We saw an enormous amount of Swedish crackers because you guys love crackers a lot. And what else? We stayed in a really old Airbnb in a really old building and it had this really cool lift. I tried to take a video and I tried to take photos, but nothing did it justice. It was very cool. What else? We also went to a place called Skansen, and I think we just went at the wrong time. I imagine it's beautiful in the summer, and I imagine it's very fun in the winter, like Christmas time. But in April, not much is happening, and a lot of the buildings were shut. So basically, it was a bit underwhelming, but I think it was just purely because we went in April and nothing was happening. I imagine in the summer it's really fun and there's lots of trees and colour and probably activities and music, and in the winter Christmas markets, but we went there in April when nothing was really happening and it was really cold and grey and a bit miserable. It's a really huge open air museum. Huge is an overstatement. It's relatively large. Apparently, according to the internet, it's the Sweden's largest open air museum, and it's filled with historic houses and talks about the traditions of Sweden and different houses from different parts of the country, which is why I wanted to go, because I thought I love Swedish houses, I love the red houses, and I love learning about the Swedish traditions, and I genuinely thought there would be more like knitting and weaving and like carving or just the traditional traditions, but everything was basically shut. So there was a huge marketplace, which is usually thriving apparently, and has lots of music and I suppose people showing off the traditional crafts, and people dress up in the old clothing and kind of reenact the lifestyle. There are some houses that you can go into and see the rooms and how they're set up, and most of them were shut and you had to use your phone. You stood outside this building, used your phone, clicked on a QR code and it would show you what's inside, but it didn't work on my phone for some reason. A couple of the buildings were open, so they were fun because it was like a dream going into an old Swedish home and seeing it all laid out with all the old-fashioned things, with the wall hangings. You know, if you're here, I love Swedish wall hangings and embroideries, and that part was fun. And there were chickens, that was fun. It's just, it was a bit underwhelming because there wasn't really much information. We also, apparently you were meant to go either way, but I feel like we went the wrong way because we'd go through a settlement and have no idea what it was, not until we got to the end of it, and then there would be a small sign saying what it was. But we went through the whole thing without knowing until the end. Yeah, it was a bit underwhelming, but it was still fun. But it was snowing and it was cold and my husband was frozen. I purchased some felt insoles to put into my boots because my feet were frozen, and I think I bought the wrong size, to be honest. I thought you're supposed to buy, if your feet are a size 38 and you put an insole into the shoe, you should get a size smaller, otherwise it would be too big. But actually I think I should have purchased a 38 and not a 37, but oh well, it kept my feet really toasty warm and that's the main thing. So I'm going to try them out in my different shoes and different boots and see, and if it doesn't really work, I'll just buy another one in 38 at some point. They're from Ulcentrum in Öland, and at some point we will go back there, so maybe then. We did have a bit of an unfortunate incident in the little cafe that was there. We went in there thinking it was going to be great because it's a Swedish house. I mean, you sold me right there. But we bought 2 bowls of soup and it was 30 euro for 2 bowls of soup, and they weren't even full bowls. They were just, a man came with a jug, put half a piece of bread in each bowl, shared out a small little jug of soup into it, which was shocking in itself, and then it just was absolute pure salt. And I love salt. I have an entire drawer dedicated to salt. I've got about 20 different salts. I love salt, but this was just a salt water bowl of nothingness. And we sent it back. And I have been informed it's not very normal for people in Sweden to complain or to send things back. And the woman was definitely shocked when I sent it back and said it wasn't edible. But it kind of just annoyed me because she didn't apologise. She didn't act, I suppose, just how I'm used to. And I'm in Berlin and people are quite to the point and blunt. Maybe I'm Germanising. I've become Berlin. Where I send things back. But at least if you send something back here, they would say sorry. And I don't know. We didn't ask for a refund, but we asked for tea and just replace it with tea. But we did then essentially pay €30 for a cup of tea, which, yeah, it just kind of ruined the whole experience there. But I've deleted my memories, the negative memories of that on my phone, and I'm only focusing on the fun part, which was the chickens and the houses and the fun part, because I don't want to remember that place like that. But it was a bit of a downer. So after that, we went back to Gamla Stan and went to the nice places, and yeah. I think if I was there in the summer and someone said, do you want to go? I would go again. I would definitely bring my own food, but I would go again. And if I was there in the winter and there was a Christmas market, I'd definitely go again. Yeah, it was just poor timing, basically. Then my husband celebrated his birthday there. And we got him some princess cake, and we just walked everywhere. We just walked around, went and visited random places, and bought some yarn, bought some nice things. I'm kind of running out of steam, don't know if you can tell, so I'm going to wrap this up here. If you have watched this to the end, thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. I thought about separating the video into parts, but I didn't think there would be that much to say, but evidently there was. So yes. Hello! I am back again. I completely forgot to mention so many things. So first of all, I am Emily Kate Mathis on Ravelry, Coffee and Instagram. So if you want to go and follow me on any of those, please do. And secondly, I have my knit along that I completely forgot to talk about. I've talked about it in my last 2-3 videos, so you may know already, but I am running a vintage make along 2024, and it's basically for any kind of sewing, knitting, crochet, whatever you wish, crafting wise. That is anything from around 1920s to 1960s. There are no hard and fast rules, it's just for fun, just so that we can all see each other's makes. And Instagram is generally the easiest place because you can put your sewing or crochet or tapestry or weaving or whatever on there. But I do have a Ravelry thread, it's just not very active, and I'm also not very good at checking it, but it's there just in case you're not on Instagram. It's basically just a fun place to see other people's makes and colour choices and what people want to make. And I'm loving it. I love seeing all these new projects popping up. There are chevrons galore going on, and yeah, there's lots of lovely fun things on there. Instagram is finally starting to show other people's posts and not just mine, so that's great. And if you do want to tag me, if you want to post in there, just use the hashtag VintageMAL2024 and tag me so that I can see it, because it doesn't always show up on the hashtag for some unknown reason. It might come on one day and disappear the next, but I can add it to my stories and add it to my highlights, and then everyone can go through and have a look at them regardless of whether it is fancying showing up on the grid that day. Anything else? I think that is it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!